The screaming stopped at 03 for 7 hours. Lieutenant Eric Vale pressed his back against the bioluminescent bark of what intelligence called a twilight oak, feeling the alien would pulse with unnatural warmth against his combat armor. His helmet's HUD flickered with static third malfunction in 20 minutes. The Twilight Zone was eating their tech alive. Bravo 7, report, he whispered into his comm, knowing he'd get nothing but the same crackling void that had swallowed his team's voices. One by one over the past 4 hours. Silence, always silence. The forest around him breathed with colors that had no names in human language. Purple mists coiled between trees whose leaves shimmered like oil on water. Somewhere in the distance, something that might have been wind chimes played a melody that made his teeth ache. Eric had led 43 successful operations across 7 worlds. He'd stared down plasma cannons and walked through nuclear fire. But this breathing place made his hands shake. The mission briefing had been classified beyond his clearance level. All he knew was the target, an entity designated Violet 7, ancient, hostile, responsible for the disappearance of 3 entire reconnaissance battalions. Earth Command wanted it eliminated before the main invasion force arrived. Simple, clean, impossible. A twig snapped behind him. Eric spun, rifle raised, finger on the trigger, and froze. Standing 30 meters away, framed by hanging vines that glowed like captured starlight, was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and the most terrifying. She was taller than any human woman, with skin that seemed to drink in the forest's violet light and reflect it back in soft, hypnotic waves. Massive wings stretched behind her, translucent membranes catching the ambient glow and scattering it in rainbow fragments across the clearing. Spiraled horns crowned her head like a dark tiara, and her eyes were the color of fresh blood, and they looked right through him. "Hello, little soldier," she said, though her lips never moved. Her voice echoed inside his skull like a half-remembered lullaby. "I've been waiting for you." Eric's training screamed at him to fire. His finger tightened on the trigger, but something in those crimson depths held him frozen. A moth pinned by the flame it couldn't resist. "Who? What are you?" The words tumbled from his lips before he could stop them. She smiled, and Eric felt something fundamental shift in the world around him. The forest held its breath. The mist stilled. Even his heartbeat seemed to slow in deference to that terrible, perfect smile. "I am the queen of this realm," she whispered directly into his mind. "And you, beautiful man of steel and flesh, are trespassing in my garden." The queen moved through the twilight like liquid shadow, each step causing the forest floor to bloom with luminescent flowers. Eric's rifle felt impossibly heavy in his hands. Every instinct honed by years of combat training told him to retreat, to call for backup, to run. But his feet remained rooted to the spot. "Your kind has such interesting minds," she mused, circling him slowly. Her voice was honey poured over broken glass, so rigid, so military. "Tell me, Lieutenant Eric Vale, yes, I know your name. How many of my children have you killed on your march through the outer realms?" "I don't know what you're talking about." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. She laughed, a sound like silver bells tolling for the dead. "The flame sprites of Xerion Prime, the crystal singers of Vale's Edge, the shadow dancers of the Ember Courts. Your people called them hostile entities and strategic targets. I called them family." Eric's HUD finally stabilized, and what it showed him made his blood freeze. The Queen's biosignature was off the charts, synergy readings that shouldn't be possible. Life signs that registered as both dead and blazingly alive. According to his instruments, she was a walking nuclear reactor wrapped in flesh and starlight. "My squad," he managed. "Where are they?" "Safe," she replied, though something in her tone suggested that safe was a relative term. "They walked into my embrace willingly in the end. As will you." She was closer now, close enough that he could see the intricate tattoos of light that spiraled across her exposed skin, could smell the intoxicating perfume of night-blooming flowers that seemed to emanate from her very presence. Her dress, if it could be called a dress, was woven from shadows and starlight, clinging to curves that would have made ancient sculptors weep. "You're afraid," she observed, reaching out to trace the air inches from his cheek. Even that near touch sent electricity racing through his nervous system. "Good. Fear keeps the mind sharp, makes the final surrender all the sweeter. I won't surrender to you. Eric raised his rifle, though his hands trembled. Earth Command knows where I am. They'll send reinforcements. Oh, my dear Lieutenant. Her smile widened, revealing teeth like polished pearls. They already have. The forest around them suddenly erupted with screams, human screams, through the trees. Eric could see muzzle flashes and the blue-white glare of plasma charges. His backup had arrived and they were dying. The night filled with the sound of weapons fire, panicked shouts, and something else. Something that might have been singing. The Echo Battalion, the Queen said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. 47 of your finest warriors, equipped with the latest in anti-supernatural warfare technology. They're discovering, rather painfully, that there's no technology quite like 10,000 years of accumulated spite. A soldier burst through the undergrowth, his armor scorched and sparking. He saw Eric, started to shout a warning, and simply dissolved into violet mist when the Queen glanced in his direction. Show off, she murmured to herself, then turned those impossible eyes back to Eric. Now, where were we? Eric's tactical training finally overrode his paralysis. He dove left, combat rolling behind a cluster of crystal formations as he opened fire on full automatic. The hypervelocity rounds should have shredded anything they hit. They passed through. The Queen like she was made of mist, rude. Her voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. And here I was hoping we could have a civilized conversation. The crystal cluster behind Eric suddenly bloomed with razor-sharp petals. He rolled again, narrowly avoiding being turned into human confetti, and came up running. The forest had become a maze of shifting paths and impossible geometries. Trees that had been distant moments ago now loomed overhead, their branches reaching for him with fingers of bark and thorn. You cannot run from yourself, Lieutenant. The Queen's voice followed him through the twisting pathways. And I am in your mind now. Little soldier, I am in your blood, in your breath, in the spaces between your heartbeats. Eric's calm crackled. To life, all units, fall back. Repeat, fall back to extraction point Zulu. We are taking heavy casualties. He keyed his mic. Command, this is Vale. The target is already dead. The Queen finished, materializing directly in front of him. This time, she was solid. This time, when Eric fired, the round sparked off armor that looked like crystallized night. Your extraction point is compromised. Your reinforcements are scattered. Your technology is failing. She reached out almost gently and crushed his rifle in her bare hands. The metal groaned and bent like putty. But you, she continued, stepping closer, you're different from the others. There's something broken in you, isn't there? Something that recognizes the darkness I offer. Eric stumbled backward, drawing his sidearm. Stay back, you've seen too much death. She whispered, and suddenly they were standing in a memory. Eric, as a young soldier, watching his first squad die in a plasma bombing. The screams were exactly as he remembered them. You've given too much of yourself to a war that will never end. When did you last sleep without nightmares, Lieutenant? When did you last look in the mirror and recognize the man staring back? The memory shifted. Eric at 25, standing over the grave of his younger brother, a casualty of the Rigel uprising. Eric at 30, receiving his promotion over the corpses of his friends. Eric now, hollow-eyed and exhausted, leading more young soldiers into another meat grinder. I can end it, the Queen said softly. The pain, the guilt, the endless, grinding weight of survival when everyone you've ever cared about has died. I can give you peace. Eric's gun wavered. For a moment, just a moment, the offer was tempting. Then his training reasserted itself. What you're showing me, it's not real, isn't it? She tilted her head, and in the gesture was something almost human, almost vulnerable. Tell me, Eric Vale, when was the last time you felt truly alive? Before he could answer, she was moving, not attacking, dancing. Her wings spread wide, catching the light of a dozen different stars, and she spun through the air with impossible grace. Where her feet touched the ground, flowers bloomed. Where her wings brushed the trees, they sang in harmonics that made reality shiver. And despite himself, despite his training and his duty, and his absolute certainty that this creature was his enemy, Eric found himself watching and wondered that she was beautiful. Not just physically, though she was that. Gods help him, but in the way that natural disasters were beautiful, terrible, and magnificent, and utterly, completely beyond human understanding. There, she said, landing lightly in front of him. Now you begin to see. The Queen's dance had changed the forest around them. What had been a twilight wood was now something from a fever dream trees that grew downward into a star-filled sky, flowers that sang in voices like crystal bells, rivers of liquid light that flowed uphill toward moons that might have been tears shed by sleeping gods. Eric stood at the center of it all, his weapon forgotten at his side, watching the most beautiful creature in the universe weave reality like a tapestry. This is what your kind seeks to destroy, she said, her voice now gentle, almost sad. Not because we threaten you, we've hidden from your expanding empire for millennia, but because we represent something you cannot conquer, cannot catalog, cannot control. The briefings, Eric started, then stopped. What had the briefings actually said? Hostile entity, strategic threat, elimination priority. But had anyone actually explained why? Your commanders sent you here with weapons designed for creatures of flesh and bone. The Queen continued, settling gracefully onto a throne that grew from the living wood at her unspoken command. They told you I was a monster to be slain. They never mentioned that I was a queen to be dethroned. She gestured, and Eric's armor began to feel impossibly heavy. Not damaged, just unnecessary. Like wearing winter clothes in summer. Without conscious thought, he began removing pieces of it, letting them fall to the flower-carpeted ground. Better, she asked, and he had to admit it was. What do you want from me? He asked, surprised by how calm his voice sounded. What I've always wanted from your kind, she replied, understanding, respect, the acknowledgement that there are powers in this universe older and stranger than your empire can imagine. She rose from her throne and began to approach him again. This time, Eric didn't retreat. I have watched your species spread across the stars like a plague of metal and ambition, she said, her fingers trailing through the air, leaving traces of violet fire. You consume worlds. You reshape ecosystems. You reduce infinite complexity to simple categories, useful, dangerous, or irrelevant. We're survivors, Eric said. We do what we have to do, and so do I. She was close enough to touch now, close enough that he could see the galaxies spinning in her eyes, could feel the heat radiating from her skin like standing near a star. I could kill you in 1,000 different ways, she whispered. I could stop your heart with a thought. I could trap your soul in crystal and listen to you scream for eternity. I could unmake you so thoroughly that you would never have existed at all. Her hand rose to his cheek, and this time she actually touched him. Her skin was impossibly soft, impossibly warm, and where it contacted his flesh, Eric felt something he hadn't experienced in years, peace. But that would be wasteful, she continued. You are beautiful, Eric Vale, scarred and broken and beautiful in your mortal fragility. It would be a shame to simply destroy such artistry. Then what? He breathed. She smiled and leaned closer and whispered directly into his ear. Then I give you what you've been searching for your entire life. Before he could ask what that was, her lips found his. The kiss was electric, overwhelming, transcendent. Eric felt his consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of his flesh, felt himself touching the edge of something vast and ancient and utterly alien. For one perfect moment, he understood what it meant to be more than human. Then the pain began. Eric tried to scream, but no sound emerged from his throat. The Queen's kiss had become something else, a conduit, a doorway, a bridge between what he was and what she was becoming him into. His enhanced combat armor lay scattered around them, like discarded snake skin. His body, now dressed only in the simple uniform beneath, began to glow with the same violet radiance that surrounded her. But where her light spoke of power and eternity, his spoke of ending. SHH. She whispered against his lips, even as his life began to flow into her like water finding its level. Don't fight it. This is the gift I offer, not death, but transformation. Not ending, but beginning. Through the growing haze of his fading consciousness, Eric felt something impossible happening. His tactical implants, designed to record and transmit battlefield data, were still functioning, still uploading everything they saw to the orbital command station light years away. The Queen pulled back from their kiss, her crimson eyes now flecked with gold. and smiled down at his dying form with something that might have been genuine affection. "You were magnificent," she told him, her hand stroking his cheek with surprising tenderness. "In another universe, another time, I might have made you my consort instead of my casualty. But your kind has made such partnerships impossible." Eric's vision began to tunnel, but his implants recorded everything: her face, her voice, the exact measurements of her energy signature, everything Earth Command would need to identify and track her. "I know what you're thinking," she said, and her smile turned sad. "Yes, your little recording devices are still functioning. Yes, your masters will see everything that has transpired. Here, that was always part of the plan." With tremendous effort, Eric managed to form words. "Why?" "Because I want them to come," she replied simply. "I want them to see what they're truly facing. I want them to understand that this is not a war they can win with bigger guns and better armor." She leaned down and kissed his forehead, a gesture so gentle it might have been a benediction. "I am Queen Lurvale of the Twilight Vale," she said, and her voice carried the weight of eons. "I am the daughter of the first star and the last shadow. I have watched species rise and fall like waves upon a cosmic shore, and now I am done hiding." Eric's heart stuttered, skipped, began the slow process of stopping, but his implants recorded her final words with perfect clarity. "Tell your commanders that their war has come to the threshold of powers they cannot comprehend. Tell them that for every soldier they send into my realm, I will return to them a lesson in the true meaning of mortality. Tell them," she paused, looking down at Eric's still form with something that might have been regret. "Tell them that the Queen of Violet Death is no longer content to rule from the shadows." The forest around them pulsed once with brilliant light, and when it faded, Eric's body lay peacefully among the luminescent flowers, his face serene in death. The recording implants continued their transmission for another 17 minutes. Before their power finally failed, Queen Lurvale stood over him for a long moment, then spread her magnificent wings and rose into the star-drunk sky. She had a war to prepare for. Behind her, the flowers that had grown from Eric's blood began to bloom in colors that had no human names, and in the heart of each blossom was the faint but unmistakable sound of distant thunder. The storm was coming. 3 days later, aboard the Orbital Command Station Leviathan, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen received the most classified transmission in human military history. The recording was 17 hours, 37 minutes, and 43 seconds of impossible beauty and absolute terror. When it finished playing, Admiral Chen sat in silence for exactly 60 seconds. Then she activated her emergency communications ray and sent a priority message to Earth Command. "Request immediate reinforcement. Recommend deployment of 7th Fleet, 10th Marine Division, and all available Xenocide protocols. Target designation updated from hostile entity to extinction level threat. We are no longer facing a monster. Command, we are facing a goddess who has decided to go to war." In the depths of space, the Leviathan's long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving through the twilight zone, not fleeing, advancing. The Queen of Violet Death was keeping her promise. The real war was about to begin. Asterisk to be continued. In the War of Steel and Seduction.